We are live. All right, let's kick it off, mate.
All right, so without further ado, I'm not sure whether I need to introduce the one and only Emma Doyle, but I will. Emma is, as everyone knows, a world-renowned leading elite high-performance coach from Melbourne, Australia. She is a superstar in every department of the profession of coaching. She's impacted everyone from individuals at tour level in tennis to teams and team sports across the globe, as well as her really big thing that I love is her energy and her ability to empower all of us. So this is the Empower Hour with the one and only Emma Doyle on the special topic today of self-esteem. Over to you, Em.
Thank you so much, Conrad. I appreciate that. I'd like to everyone jump in the chat box straight away. Let's get everyone going. And I'd love to know, out of 10, just how are you feeling? So if 10 is you are feeling amazing, then feel free to put number 10 in the chat box. If you, whatever you are feeling, just put it in there and let's see how everyone's going today. And love it. Lauren's a 10. Oh, 11. Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. Well, as we do when we share our screen, I'm pretty sure everybody on today, maybe except for Margot, has done all 5 modules, live modules, actually. So just type in the chat box, yes. And for Margot, if this is your first time watching one of these webinars, just type in number 5. So this is your, oh, you have 2 modules. Awesome. Thank you. Yes. Beautiful. All right. Great. And I believe definitely Jing, I know that she's done all 5. So thank you for being on here, and remember to let people in your network know about these webinars because you can also catch them, of course, on the Centercourt YouTube channel. All right. So I'm going to share my screen so we get going. We know what, we know where we're heading, and we'll go into our usual activities here and follow the same format as we do every single time. All right, thumbs up, Conrad, if you can see my screen. Beautiful. All right, so without further ado, as Conrad says, I love how he says that, let's get into our empowerment projects. All right, so where are we? Let's check out the Genius model so we know where we have come from. So week 1, we did self-awareness, then we went up to looking at our patterns, especially our morning and evening routine. Hope everyone's making some great changes there. Then we moved down under relationships to empowering language. Welcome if you've just joined us. Then last week, first person to type in the chat box. Who remembers what we did last week? Fantastic unit on what, where did we go next? Last week we did our unit on what? First person to type it in, waking everybody up. We did, yeah, values, exactly. Everyone's on it. I'll be asking you in a minute to follow up on the game plan for values. Now have a look where we're heading today. So this is this elusive word called confidence. A lot of parents that I work with ask me, hey, you know, can you just help my child be more confident? As we know, confidence is this ball of energy that sometimes you can have it and sometimes it can leave you, even the most confident of people. So the concept that I want you to get your head around straight away as it relates to confidence is building up your self-esteem. It lives at the top of the Genius model. That is on purpose. It's like the crown. Imagine a crown that sits on top of your head. That is exactly how I want you to think and feel about your self-esteem. We build it layer by layer, and that is what impacts our confidence. So imagine it like a crown on top of your head, and that is the unit and the module that we're doing today. I know I say this every week, but it's such an important module, and I'm really happy that you joined us for it. So that is where we're heading. And I think the other thing just to remember about this is that really it's about when you look in the mirror, the person looking back at you, that, you know, that's your self-esteem, if there's an easy way for me to describe it. Do you like what you see? Are you comfortable in your own skin? And obviously, certainly I know in a lot of the teenage athletes that I work with, they're very turbulent years, and this is a very difficult concept to get their head around. So hopefully remember, this whole empowerment project is about adding tools into either your coaching toolkit, your playing toolkit, or your parenting toolkit. So, so again, that's where we are heading. All right, let's review the game plan. So last week for 15 points, and I want you to type in your chat box here, whether you did this or not, you can still participate right here, right now. I asked you to pick your top 3 values. Now, if you didn't do that exercise, just have a think about, have a reflect on what do you value. So I'm going to type in one of my highest values for 2020 because they change for me each year. I renew them each year. So empathy, for example, is one of my highest values. Yeah, grit, perseverance, respect, family, fantastic, all excellent values. So that was 15 points for last week. To get 30 points, remember that our values drive our behaviors, okay? So for 30 points, you had to link one tangible behavior with your values per value. So for example, if you're an athlete and you did choose grit, one tangible behavior might be your ability to, we spoke about last week, making less than 10 unforced errors in a 3-minute activity. That could be anything, no matter what sport. Again, if your top value I see there is positivity, then the tangible behavior might be that you focus on reframing the start of your sentence with 2 words, beginning with next time, which we covered last week. And finally, let's see if anyone did this. Remember, you had to come up with a crazy quote or an acronym, and you had to put it up on a wall, or it could even just be on your phone, on your screensaver, so that you can remember your values. We came up with some beauties last week. Remember, we had the can-cans, we had Reese's Peanut Butter Classics, Go Play Rufus. Lauren, I love it. Obviously, if you did miss last week's module, that stands for, as you can see, Go Play Rufus. The first letter of each of those little crazy quotes stands for grit, perseverance, and respect. Thanks heaps, Lauren, for throwing that one in and sharing that with us all. I promise you, you will remember, you will definitely remember your values. And of course, if we not only remember them, then we live those behaviors, you will certainly, it will help point you in the direction of your goals and your dreams. I can guarantee that. So that's how you won the game for last week with our values. All right, section 1. What are some of the potential unforced errors that you may be making as it relates to self-esteem? So this little picture here always makes me giggle, and perhaps you can sort of relate to being a people pleaser, someone that just says yes to sort of everybody else, and you actually almost lose your core identity. You don't really sort of know who you are. And alternatively, you care so much about what others think of you. Oh, you're this, you're that. Oh, you know, Emma, she's really loud, or she has too much energy, she's too much for me. Or so if I listen to potentially what others, you know, if they may say those things about me, then it might impact my self-esteem. It might impact my confidence. It may not allow me to live the best version of myself possible. Another one with self-esteem is, and this rated in the top 3 reasons why people fail, you have to be perfect. Perhaps you can relate to the perfectionism syndrome. All right, you're always trying to perfect something. And I know that on these webinars, we have a lot of open skilled sports people as well, like field hockey, we've got lacrosse, we've got tennis players, soccer players that have been on some of these webinars, and they are open sports. You cannot play perfect for an entire game. It's literally impossible. So perhaps you can relate to some of those. And as a result of being perfect, you never take any risks. You beat yourself up. You feel guilty when you mess up. and you don't like yourself in some way, old conditioning, old patterns and old stories, which by the way is a prelude to next week's module on stories, and what your parents say about you or what society or what other coaches have said about you, even in a negative way, gets you so far down that you're not able to actually play at your best and perform at your best. So I don't know about you, but I can definitely relate to many of the things that I just said then. So just have a reflect, of course, as we always do, on what potentially impacts your self-esteem. What gets you down? What voices are you listening to? And are they serving you? And as we do every week in section 1, we flip those potential unforced errors into winners. Okay, so if you weren't doing that, what could you be doing? So some of the affirmations that I'll read out and some of the promises in this webinar today is for you to leave saying, I speak my truth. I take care of myself. I accept my mistakes. I acknowledge my areas for development. Notice not weaknesses, areas for development. And I embrace my strengths. That's a huge part of tonight's module. I take calculated risks. I like who I am. And when I look in the mirror, I see the real me, the one who is, insert whatever words you want, brave, kind, compassionate, gritty, positive, full of integrity. You walk your talk. So that's where we're heading tonight. So flip your own in your head right now. We worked on reframing, the technique of reframing our language last week. So if you had thought to yourself, okay, yeah, I always say this to myself, you're not good enough, or you'll never make it to this level, just flip it. Just flip it, and you don't have to make it flip so much that it's out of reach. Just flip it slightly, as in, I look forward to the challenge. And anyone that wrote on the how they're feeling at that number, if you're an 8 out of 10, how could you use tools and strategies to get to be at 10 out of 10 so that you're completely present for this webinar? Because I definitely really appreciate everyone, especially being here live. It shows an extra level of commitment and dedication. So just go ahead and flip those in your own mind's eye. And finally, in section 1, I'd love to finish with a story. Always try and share a story that, you know, I think back to the athletes that I've worked with. And I wanted to tell you about, this one's an adult athlete who, interestingly, this is her words, not mine. I'll read it from one of her quotes. She was suffering periods of self-doubt, and she was feeling overwhelmed at times with the enormity of the goal and dream that she had set for herself. And she was continuously thinking about what she still had to do rather than just focusing on in that present moment. And when I met with Heather Lyons, just a super courageous lady, she, you know, when we met for coffee the first time, she was really, her shoulders were down. I could see she was almost riddled with just this inability to say, you know, I said, well, you know, what is it that you want to achieve? And she said, I want to run the New York Marathon. And I'm booked in, and I've got in the ballot and I'm ready to go. But her whole words, and even her actually saying that's what she wanted to do, she struggled to even say it. It was like she didn't actually believe it was going to happen. She was almost shocked that she even got in. So what we started to do is I didn't go, well, of course, you know, of course you can run the New York Marathon. We reframed the way that she went about it, and her biggest thing her little mantra, if you like, was one step at a time. How do you win a marathon? One step at a time. She just kept repeating one step at a time. And in her training, and she actually worked with a coach he was fantastic for her training program, but perhaps his language was really, really negative, and she was taking all of that on board. So we worked on reframing. She said, after working with Emma, the difference, my mindset was immediate. She taught me how to reframe my thoughts so the negative became realistic and challenging and positive. We worked on how to break down the marathon so that I was running one step at a time. With this new positive mindset at the age of 51, I completed my first ever marathon in 5 hours, which was the goal that I had set. And that's her quote there. It just proves with the right mindset you can achieve anything. And certainly that day when I first met her for coffee, with her body language, just showed me that her self-esteem was really low. And layer by layer, in other words, one step at a time, she was able to flip that using practical tools. So hopefully that story gets us all motivated and excited to reflect on our own self-esteem and look at the next step, as we always do, which is our strategies. So we always share 5 strategies and 3 tactics, and then I'm going to leave you with a game plan. Again, feel free, as we always do, if you have any questions, stop me at any time. And certainly, Comrade, if you want to raise your hand, ask anything over the next 5 strategies, just stop me as we go, and I'll of course, some of them will be interactive. So, all right. So the first strategy that's important when we're talking about when we're talking about self-esteem is what I call the stretch cycle. Now, I love Shrek. I love kids' movies. I'm definitely an auntie that really enjoys kids' movies. I actually make tennis activities out of a lot of kids' movies. So I'll go and watch a kids' movie with a pen and paper and start creating tennis games. But this scene, I don't know whether anyone can remember it, when they're walking along and Donkey's trying to understand ogres. And he's like, I don't really get ogres. And Shrek's trying to explain it to him. And he literally just says, ogres are like onions. In other words, you know, it's quite a funny scene because he's like, what, they stink? And he's like, no, they have lots and lots of layers. And that is pretty much, if you think about the onion, I want you to think about your self-esteem, especially for the rest of this module, in terms of building from the inside out. And we just stretch, stretch, and stretch, okay? About 10% of the population, they're the ones that can jump out of their comfort zone. They're the ones that can go from the middle of the onion almost like to the outside layer in one step. 90% of the athletes that I work with, based on personality, based on where they're at with their coaches, etc., they just need to build. It's like, here's my inner core superpowers that we call them, and then I just add one layer, one layer, one layer, like the onion principle, the stretch principle. If you can just stretch one part of yourself and grow one area of yourself, okay, great. Now, what's next once you've done that? So that is really sort of the first way of, I call it, discovering your inner coach and strengthening your inner voice, or your private inner voice. What you say to yourself when nobody else is listening, that will be what impacts your self-esteem. Okay, are you berating yourself, or are you actually being realistic and giving yourself an opportunity, you know, having that growth mindset and seeing even difficult things as embracing them as challenges? So that's strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is probably my favorite strategy, like ever, and it's called the confidence formula. And look, this formula is an Emma Doyle formula. This is my 30th year in the coaching industry, from probably over 15 different sort of courses that I've done for my own personal development. I've taken bits and pieces. And this is what I've sort of come up with over the years. And that is self-esteem, in other words, confidence, equals time plus experience divided by a positive attitude. So let me just say that again. Your self-esteem, in other words, confidence, the confidence formula equals time. Now, I used to say you can't short circuit time, but just with regards to time, if you practice for 2 hours and it's a quality practice, well, let me reframe that. If you practice for 45 minutes, I was talking to Matt Swalander, one of the tennis players from the greats many years ago. He said with the indoor courts in Sweden, they could only book them for 45 minutes. So from the minute they got on the court, the practice was such high volume, such high quality, that they didn't need to practice for, you know, hours and hours and hours. Just because everyone says you should do 4 hours a day, is that the best use of your time? So quality time, okay, plus somebody else's experience. So if you go back to the stretch cycle, think about who's somebody just outside of your or where you want to be, and how can you learn from their failures and learn from their experience so you don't make those mistakes if it resonates with you. Time plus experience. You can short circuit experience. You don't have to experience everything for yourself. You don't have to go through all the failures that they went through. You can learn and then add that to your playing toolkit, coaching toolkit, parenting toolkit, and then divide that by this growth mindset, by this positive attitude of I can, or I choose not to, or I need help. All right, there's no such thing as try in the words of Yoda. So I love that formula. I hope it resonates with you, and I like passionately believe in it. I practice it, I live it, and it works. It really, really works. It's a secret to building up your self-esteem. Strategy number 3, okay, is what I'm calling a realistic view. Now, this can work in your favor, okay, and it can also work against you. So let's just take an example of if I think about the sport of lacrosse. So let's say I'm a developing athlete and I'm a young teenager, and somebody says, "Oh, what do you do?" I am a lacrosse player. So when you say that, that's fine. But let's say, for example, now I get a really bad injury and I'm 6 months without, I'm not a lacrosse player. Well, who am I? Now that might be a little deep, but hopefully stay with me for a minute here. And imagine if you were to reframe it, and you are to simply say something along the lines of, I play lacrosse. So it's a totally different way of looking at it, because your sport doesn't define who you are. Now, that's an example of just being mindful of how you say, I am a tennis player versus I play tennis, or I play professional tennis, versus I am a tennis player and all of a sudden my rankings dropped 300 places, okay, for whatever reason. All of a sudden my identity may be hit. But if I'm a professional tennis player whose ranking has gone backwards, that's okay because I play tennis versus I am. Now, when I said you can use it to your advantage, you can do it on the flip side. Imagine something within your control, such as I am strong. I'm sure that's one of the affirmations of some pretty, strong athletes, Samantha Stosur, for example. I'm sure she believes that. As she is strong, she's done the work. So you can use having a realistic view of the I am statements can completely alter and impact your identity when you look in the mirror. So be mindful of how you use I am statements. And if you take a realistic view, they can be really, really awesome. And just remember, your sport doesn't define who you are. That's just the game you play. So I hope that wasn't too deep and everyone is still with me. I might actually pause there. Conrad, I might get you to just, there's some heavy concepts already.
They are, and they're very true. In fact, Emma, where myself also as a coach experiencing being with players at various key moments in their life. One that stands to mind for me is when you're with a player, and I've been fortunate to be with some players a long time, and they go to retire. And so, not that any of our audience today are probably near that, but it's a good example of being able to separate being a tennis player versus, I am tennis. Because everyone gets to that point, whether it be academics, whether it be, other commitments come into your life, where you need a balanced view of it and a realistic view of where are you headed. So I love that example. I was also just reflecting on, Emma, if I could, on your formula, which I think is outstanding. I mean, that is something that I wouldn't mind getting printed up and stuck somewhere on one of our courts.
Yeah.
But that whole self-esteem, being time and experience and a positive attitude, I've seen many, many people with good, strong self-esteem that take a bad, there's a bad day in the office, a bad loss or something comes along. And at the end of the day, it is that positive attitude that helps them maintain that self-esteem. So that's in our controllables, right? We always talk about controllables. So, yeah, if I could just share that.
Yeah, no, thank you for those insights. And you always do, you trigger another thought in me, especially I know we've got a couple of parents online. The other thing just to be mindful of, not only with the I am statements, but certainly just in my own family, if I could share, and, we used to say, my older sister, she's the horse girl. My middle sister, she's the doctor. Emma's, the sporty one. And then my little brother came along and nothing was left. I mean, terrible joke, right? Not funny at all. I'm sure it did impact his self-esteem, but now he's obviously brilliant and he's very musical, right? So, but again, with parents, sometimes we pigeonhole, they're the sporty one, or they're the musical, or they're the smart one, and we've just got to be really mindful and really careful with that. It's much better off saying that Emma is really loving playing her tennis is better than saying she's the tennis player. Because then one day, well, let's say, I don't want to play tennis anymore, then I've got to be able to have that conversation and feel okay about it with my parents and with my support team. So I just thought I'd share that one for parents. Okay, so we're up to now strategy number 4. This one, hopefully you'll get a laugh out of. We've gone too heavy, and now I'm going to throw in a bit of a funny one for you. But the real science behind this funny concept is, of course, that one of the biggest reasons that people fail, this whole fear of failure, and I said it earlier when we were going through potential unforced errors, is because we care too much about what others think of us. Now, that cripples a lot of us in many, many different ways, and I can certainly relate to that one for sure. So just remember that there's, if we remove judgment, all right, a lot of my teenagers, they love this. Okay, drum roll. I'm going to release this next word. Here it is. It's a Russian spy, and his name is Justin Ipov. So guess what that stands for? Just an interesting point of view. Can everyone see the letters there? Your Russian spy there is named Justin Ipov. Imagine a bubble around your body when the naysayers or the people that you really don't value in your life, who still will tell you what they think of you, you go, thank you, Justin Ipov. That's just an interesting point of view. That's all it is. It doesn't need to impact my inner bubble. And if we can remove the judgment, maybe there is something in what they said. If we remove the emotion, maybe we can take a part of what they said to your inner circle, the people that support you, the people who are your coaches, your mentors, your family, your friends, and get some feedback. Okay, so I'm not saying discard what people say. I'm saying just maybe look at it as an interesting point of view, and then you've got a choice on whether you want to take that any further. But it is the top 3 reasons why people fail. It's in those top 3 reasons. That's according to some research a friend of mine is doing out of Stanford of 289 elite athletes, 50-50 male, female. So that was in the top 3. So there is.
And if I can just say one thing, again, with what you're saying, you're bubbling my thoughts. I can think of a plethora of examples, and I'm sure you can. But 2 strike my mind. I recall I was fortunate to go to school with a good friend of mine who you know very well, Stephen Powell, who was a great Aussie rules footballer, was told all his life he was too slow, he was too this, too that, too the other. I remember having a conversation with him where he talked about his ability to separate things into someone else's opinion, which was just phenomenal mindset at a young age. Phenomenal. And the other one was when I heard Sloane Stephens, who's a great tennis player, talk about when she first started playing tennis, the first coach she had said to her mum, your daughter won't be good enough to even go to college. And she talked about that same ability of being able to put up a shield and just kind of block that thought and never let it enter into her layers or into her onion. Did not get past the first layer. that is a super skill to have, regardless who you are, whether you're, you know, female or male, young, old, coming back. You need those abilities. So yeah, if I could just wanted to share that with you, that just bubbled and sprung into mind.
Yeah, no, and interestingly, I do talks for high school student athletes, and I, you know, as you know, try not to give too much content, but you know me, I get passion. And out of all the strategies, I obviously always do a feedback form. This strategy is the one they all, hands down, say that they resonate with the most, because there's already so much going on in those turbulent teenage years inside your head. You've already got your own voice. I call them the mind monsters. We'll get to that in another module, I promise. But we've already, you know, you've already got enough going on that then if you layer on top what everybody else thinks, then it's very difficult to forge ahead and layer by. I love that you recognize that shield as the layers. Awesome. All right, that was strategy number 4. So of course, where are we going now? We are going into your superpowers. All right, so here what we're talking about, again, think about the middle of that onion, and I'll show you another image in a minute, but 3 inner core superpowers. Now, this is difficult for most people. I definitely, you know, again, I've worked with some teams, some pretty elite teams, where I thought, you know, especially when I first started talking, I thought, oh, this will be an easy exercise. You know, all you've got to do is stand up in front of everyone and just say, my superpowers are. And they struggled, especially the female teams. They were looking around the room, they were looking for reinforcement from each other, and that's okay. But eventually, by the end of the workshop, they were able to say it once they got, you know, through the support of others. So, of course, I'm going to get interactive. I know you've been sitting there for a while listening. So it's time to jump in the chat box. And you know what I'm going to ask you. And I would love you just to type in one. It doesn't have to be 3. Just what is one of your superpowers? All right, I've just typed in one for me. One of my superpowers is my coaching eye. Can just be one word. What do you think? Yeah, stamina, that ability to go and go and go. Yeah, hand-eye coordination, that is a superpower. Absolutely, fantastic. All right, so now we're going to get into the tactics, and you know, so that those that didn't have an opportunity to write in, you can think about how you can unpack your own superpowers. So let's move now into the how. They were our 5 strategies. Now we do our 3 tactics, as we do every week. All right. So as you can imagine, tactic number 1 is I'm inviting you this week to contact a mentor, a friend, and or a coach. And I want you to, of course, ask 3 people in your life what they think your superpower is. So that is definitely a tactic. Now, once you collate all that information, okay, from also parents, please, I didn't write parents in there, but it could be anyone, okay? But once you collate that information, you'll be amazed. There may be some common themes there, and then you can look yourself in the mirror and think, oh, yeah, actually, I am quite determined. You know, a couple of people have said that I'm really determined. Yep, actually, that resonates, or it doesn't. For you to really unpack your inner core superpowers. And I want you also just to reflect, this tactic is also about reflecting on the 5 closest people in your life and just asking, do they serve you? And are they like in your corner? Are they helping you get to where you want to go? That doesn't mean they're yes people always, okay? It doesn't mean they have to be your cheerleaders. You definitely need cheerleaders, but they also could be the people that challenge you to help you stretch those layers. So, so that's obviously tactic number 1. Tactic number 2 is, of course, then drawing your onion. So here's always the model that I use in my journal with my athletes. And you can see here, it's a little bit of a peace, the old-fashioned peace symbol here. So just pop in there, 1, 2, and 3. So actually writing it down, handwriting it in your journal. Once you've collated that information, put it in the middle of your onion. Put it in there and own it. Own what your superpowers are. That's tactic number 2. Tactic number 3 is, honestly, this is one of the gold medal sentences that I actually learned when I was 21 years of age. I enrolled in one of my, I think it was my second ever sort of life coaching course in Melbourne. And it's a funny story. So the brief background is they asked us to write an article about who we were. And so, you know, like at one page, we had to write down, you know, Emma Doyle is, and I struggled, and I was, of course, I'm 21, I'm still, like most people, working it out, and I'm writing this, and I'm like, oh, that's not really me, and, you know, really, and then, of course, the next day, we arrived at this course, and they said, right, pull out your one page, and I thought we would all have to read it to the group, and they're like, rip it up, and we're like, and I was like, oh, thank goodness. So we're ripping up this page, and they said, all we want you to say is this sentence: who I am is the possibility of, insert 3 qualities, and that is who I am. Now, if you think about, go back to the onion for a minute and think about what's one layer that you want to add to who you are that you know is going to impact your self-esteem. And when I was 21, I'll share 2 of the 3 when I was 21, because this sentence is so powerful that I still remember what I said at that age, which was just the other day. All right. Who I am is the possibility of self-acceptance and courage, and that is who I am. Now, there was another quality there as well, which was more personal. So, but I wanted to share at least 2 of those 3. But I remember that like it was yesterday. And that was what I needed. I needed self-acceptance and I needed courage back at that age. And that's the extra layer that I added to my, I didn't know it back then. I certainly didn't call it an onion back then. But from all the student athletes that I work with, and even coaches and people I mentor, it's like, how can you just stretch yourself? Maybe it's through looking at somebody who is where you want to be, and you want to be more like that person. What's that quality that they have that you know that you need to be more disciplined or charismatic, or you need to be more organized, and add that into that sentence. It's such a powerful sentence. So please, even if you want to take a photo of that slide, or that is a game-changing tactic. And that is how you stretch one layer at a time. As I said, some people, one guy I mentor, he throws himself completely in the deep end, and usually he swims. But not many, you either sink, or if you jump out of your comfort zone and you just jump, you throw yourself into the deep end, all of a sudden you've got to do a presentation in front of hundreds of people. Generally speaking, most people sink in those moments because they haven't built up enough. You know, instead of doing one presentation in front of 5 people, and then one in front of 10, and then one in front of 100, and build it up layer by layer. But I hope that was useful. All right. So I know you're wondering what the game plan is. I've pretty much told you exactly what the game plan is. So if you want it this week, this is what it looks like. For 15 points, you are to ask 3 people in your life, what are your superpowers? Ask 3 people in your life. You can do 5 if you want. You'll be able to collate more of those informations, those types of answers. For 30 points, write down your 3 superpowers. So you're collating all those different observations from different people. Now write down and draw yourself that onion and put those 3 superpowers inside of that onion that you own. And then finally, have a go at the who I am sentence. So add 3 new stretch qualities. Okay, so who I am is the possibility of, and whatever those 3 things that you want to add to your playing toolkit, your coaching toolkit, or your parenting toolkit. Or perhaps you might want to share even that with somebody else. And have a go doing that, in front of the mirror. Who I am is the possibility of self-acceptance, courage, and one other quality, and that is who I am. And practice saying it so you actually believe it. Practice saying it so your tone is not like, and that is who I am? I'm not sure. Maybe it's who I am. I'm not sure. Have a go at trying to say it, that you're owning it already, so then you can go about living it. So that was the game plan. We're celebrating, as we always do, because you were live on this webinar. This is solid gold information. This is years and years of my thought processes coming to life, thanks to the incredible Centercourt for giving me this opportunity. Big shout out to everybody, especially Conrad and his new position. I'm so wrapped following and watching your journey, CEO of Centercourt Tennis Academy. That's right?
Correct. Thank you.
Correct. Okay, so what's next? I know that you're all on the edge of your seat. You're like, where's the model going to go now? We are heading into reframing your story. You're probably going to kill me for saying this. I think it's an incredible module. I say that every week, but I really do believe if you learn how to reframe your story, and this reframing of the story, this stuff's been around for years and years and years. This isn't me just making this stuff up, and all the great people that I follow all believe in this. They all teach it, the Bob Litwins of the world, the Jim Layers of the world. But we're going to go through how you do it, writing down your old story, your new story, and how to boost your story. That's what we're going to be doing next week. So that's pretty exciting. And let's see if I can get my ball on my screen today. I got it last week, I think. I'll see the ball is in your, I missed it. Ball's in your court. I missed it this week. That's all right, as long as you keep having a go. And finally, we're doing great. We've got about 12 minutes. If, of course, Conrad and I love to have a chat with the old Q&A and anybody else. It's time. Before we jump into Q&A, sorry, I forgot to mention, what are you going to take action on? So the ball is in your court. Type in the chat box, what are you going to do of the game plan? Are you going to go for 15 points? Are you going to go for the game? Are you going to, who are the 3 people you're going to ask? I want to see if your time's being valuable here. Oh, Lauren's going to go for the game. Lauren, love your work. Thank you so much. Go for that game. And superpowers are so important. Building up one layer at a time. Feel free, anyone else, to write in the chat box what you're going to take action on as I stop sharing my screen now. And so I can, everyone's, Henry's joined us. I'm sure he did ages ago, probably. Sorry, Henry, I couldn't see you until now. But excellent, Margaret. Ask 3 people about my superpowers. Awesome. Take action. Going for the 15 points. Excellent, Jing. Thank you.
If I can ask one question, Em, while everyone's just doing that.
Yep.
I'd be interested to kind of hear from everyone. What is their biggest challenge that they feel within themselves to gain that ultimate state of self-esteem? It might, like you said, it might be someone else's opinion. It might be, you haven't achieved what you thought you would achieve yet, for example, So, in tennis, again, I'm a tennis guy, you're a tennis girl, we're going to talk a bit of tennis. Some people get stuck in rankings. Some people get stuck in UTR. We're seeing that now with UTR. There are many positives, but there's some negative in that some kids are branding themselves by their UTR. And when we grew up, it was, we were just playing tournaments to get better. And if you were number 3 in the state or number 20 in the state, no one really knew. You just kept playing. So that's kind of, I'd be interested to know from anyone here, what is it? Is there anything you can identify that's holding you back in your self-esteem at this point?
Thanks for sharing. We've got one answer there, just with regards to mental strength. And I would say, a lot of people ask me, obviously of the 4 things, the technical, tactical, physical, and mindset. Mindset is by far the most common answer with regards to what holds people back. A lot of people think, okay, if I just get super physically fit, then that is going to give me a stronger mindset. That can work, but it doesn't always work. Sometimes if you go about building your inner coach first, then that's, that can certainly, do you want to elaborate on, Lauren? Look like you turned your mic off there. Did you want to, or Meg, do you want to help us further explain that?
I put mental strength. As a parent observing, I think the biggest struggle tends to be social influences, and you could stand out as a leader and or perhaps develop your skills as an athlete. But in some cases, your social circles and your different buckets of your community and your friends and your family has influence and holds you back maybe in some capacity, or you doubt yourself because sometimes you have to learn at this age the strength behind sometimes you're in isolation because you think differently and you're not necessarily trying to be a leader. You're naturally inspiring others and you have a vision, and maybe not everybody's caught up to that or is on their own vision yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, absolutely. And actually, you've hit the nail on the head even more so than ever, because isolation literally is all around us. And so we're relying on these virtual platforms, and we go down a rabbit hole within our social buckets of not being able to help but read the comments when people are talking about even players. And it does impact the self-esteem. And, you know, that's why I'm so rapt that Lauren's doing these modules and on this webinar, because of those 5 strategies tonight. Number 4 is critical for a teenager. It's just an interesting point of view. It's just an interesting point of view. I don't need to take on that, especially on those comments, on those little comments. And one person said to me, you know, I certainly, since going into quarantine, I've had a number of people, you know, I've put out about 500 tennis videos, and you can imagine how many comments I've got back on those videos, because everyone's got an opinion. And if I had listened to all of those opinions, I would have stopped within the first 2 weeks of posting videos. So I'm all about, that's okay, don't follow me. If you don't like me, don't follow me, but kill people with kindness and curiosity. So be curious and be kind, and then if you know, please don't follow me if you don't agree with me. So that's sort of the approach that is so important, that we learn these tools and add these tools into our coaching toolkit.
Right, but it's hard, as you know. The reality is one thing to have it, to learn it. It's another to live it. And then not doubt yourself when the tide is going everywhere else. Or at least for just everything you know to be real has a different game plan.
And that's why the strategies, like, for example, journaling, like, let's say even for next week's module, you might even write down all of those comments that other people are saying. And half of them are obviously usually not factual, and they're emotive, and they can then be blasted out as often what somebody else is going on in their life. I always say, I wonder what's going on for this person for them to think that way, because it's just an interesting point of view. So,
well, I don't think it also, the one last comment is that it's not necessarily what they say, perhaps may very well just be actions where everyone follows, and I'm just generalizing, right? This seems to be the right wave to go, or the right path, and I don't agree with that. And then you doubt yourself because you're so true to your values and what makes sense for you, but yet you see when others go a different way.
And the thing I would just finish to wrap up that conversation would just be the strategy tonight of the 5 the inner circle. And that inner circle being, does it serve you, and are they pushing you to help you achieve where you want to go? And they're the ones that, hey, you know, everyone's doing this, but I'm thinking this. Hey, coach or mentor or grandparent or friend or someone who runs the association or someone at Centercourt can then give you, the right advice, so that you build that self-esteem. So cool. What other ones we got up there, Conrad?
We've got, I think this is quite Jing Wen's talking about. She's got a 15-year-old boy. You know, his biggest challenge is self-esteem now, and obviously expanding his social circle. That's something that's a real. I was once a 15-year-old boy, and I can tell you, it's challenging. Like, you're changing, your circles are changing, your friends some guys are getting bigger than you, some guys are getting faster than you. All of those things come into play, and it does attack your self-esteem. So I think one of the key things there, if I can make one comment on that, would be really knowing who you are and what is it that you value. And I think you've already talked about that, Emma, but for kids who change schools, you know, or go to college or change states for whatever reason, whether it be moving to, and they don't know anyone, it comes back to that self-esteem that you develop over many years. And again, it goes back to I think the Emma equation was unbelievable. Self-esteem is time plus experience divided by positive attitude. So that positive attitude, I think, will carry you in every new social circle too.
Yeah. I think, I think also I talk about in my TEDx talk about the neuroscience of the brain. It's turbulent, it's changing, it's emotional. Like those teenage years, get through it, because at the end of the day, I certainly remember when I went to college, and as you would remember, we've known each other since we were young kids. I was really small and skinny as a kid, and everyone was way taller than me, way bigger than me, and I did, didn't even come close at a state level in the under 12s. But I guarantee by the age of 19, okay, I didn't exactly shoot up, but I'm in the best shape of my life. One of the only times I've probably had a six-pack, and but you can work on that. Everything else levels, doesn't it? You just got to get through the teenage turbulent years, back yourself, and if you can stay connected to sport, I'm such a huge believer that when you then turn 18, 19 into those young adult years, you work out why you're doing things and you find that motivation to want to do it for yourself. And that's such a powerful thing because everything else catches up. And rankings, schmankings, they mean nothing once you get to that stage where then you can take control of your destiny. Yep. And probably we've got time for one more. We've got,
yeah, if you can, Em, we've got one from Margot who talked about getting better, but her UTR is not reflecting that. I have the good fortune to actually be on court with her and see her, and she's grown like just in no time. It feels like she's grown 3 to 5 inches in the last 3-6 months.
mm-hmm.
Her game is getting so much better. Everything's coming together, her technique, but the results aren't just translating yet. So again, I say yet, because it's a matter of time for her. But then it's the resilience to get through those hard losses and recover and get back on the horse on Monday morning and training and whatnot. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are go back to let's get everyone who's the first person to type in the chat box. What was the main principle of strategy number 3? What kind of statements? You can remember strategy number 3. What kind of statement was it? Just to be really conscious of what kind of statements. Yes, we take a realistic view of the I am statements. So that's my take on that. So if you define yourself by I am a 7.3 UTR, then you're missing the point. You're not. It's not I am a 7.3 UTR. It's I play tennis and my current number is 7.3. So that's a realistic view. Okay, but it's saying it's not. You're not defining yourself by your number. So that's point 1. And point 2 on that is to that's what I was going to say. The best thing about some ranking and also team sports, of course, is the fact that with UTRs, especially when you go into college, you could still be a 7.3, videotape yourself playing a 10.5, and if you lose 4 and 4, then that is what I do like about UTR. You could video that match and show that you're resilient, show that you're gutsy, you're gritty, you're determined, and you pushed that person, and that even getting 8 games will help your score. So, and then think about that from a team perspective. You can then look at what the different elements of the team, and not just, we lost because of me. A lot of people miss that last shot, or they miss that last basket and think, the whole match was onto me. Well, it wasn't. You played a game of basketball where there were many moments throughout the match that could have changed, not just that last shot. But you still embrace that last shot, that last situation. So So that principle came to mind on that question. The I am statements, so powerful, and some great questions there. So
Inspiring topic, Em. This is really an inspiring topic.
yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So just wrapping up, as I'm very, very grateful every week for your time, your effort, your energy, your listening skills, your eye contact, and I just appreciate everyone for watching it live. Please, again, I know this is such great, valuable content. If you can just spread the message, share the love, tell 1 or 2 other people, check it out on the YouTube channel, or join us live next week for the next module. And you know, I really appreciate. Thank you, Lauren, for writing that beautiful comment there. And yeah, and thanks, Conrad, and congrats again, mate. Love having you on, and your insights always trigger pretty cool thoughts, and appreciate everyone. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, Emma.
All right, take care. See you next week.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
See you next week.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jean.
No problem.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay.